I'll just put what am I gonna put in here? I'll say dun dun dun. Light gold, more than we have right now. Okay. We'll get the crafting.
Tunnel's closed. We're trapped without the hoist.
Look, there she is. Statue. It's her. The way I saw her.
Lilith.
We need to find my mother.
Over there, the hoist. At last, our ride out. Oh. Slain? What happened? We need reinforcements.
No, we can
What was that?
It came from beyond the gate.
The escort. They're all dead. Over there.
A woman. Vigo. It was one of the women you sent. Only... she wasn't human. She was a demon, like the statue. Claims she mothered sanctuary. It was a dead bloodbath.
The other woman, Venard. Where is she?
She begged for her life. Lilith spared her, let her deeper in. Give up, girl. She's lost. Vigo, you must listen. Steel did nothing. Spells, prayers, all useless. Go to Corval. Tell Pro. Raise the army. The father. Evil itself mocks sanctuary. Do this for me.
He is dead.
I'm done for. Your mother told me this trinket would bring good fortune. To think I trusted her.
She bribed you with it, didn't she? You weren't supposed to let her through at all. But it's not too late. She can still be saved.
Not by me. Not anymore. Prava will know what to do.
You're leaving us? Abandoning her?
There's nothing left to abandon. She's good as dead. I'm sorry, kid.
He really just left us. It's up to us now. Lilith can't be too far.
What is this? How your mind races. Yes, I am Lilith, Mother of Sanctuary. daughter of hatred. I have what you seek. You hunger for knowledge. You dragged your child all over Sanctuary in pursuit of it.
No, I taught her how to survive.
Is that what you want to believe? Drop the act. You have questions. I have answers. I know the fabric of the cosmos.
Everything I've read has warned me against you.
You've read so much, yet know so little. Will you accept my offer?
I don't know. Will you let me try? I want to try.
Your mother is alive. She came this way with Lilith.
How can you be sure?
Sometimes I see visions of the past. I saw them.
What? How?
Lilith's petals. Her blood was fed to me once. There.
Curious. You are eager to know why you were spared.
Yes.
Do you have faith in me?
I want to.
Good. For now, all you need know is that we are going to meet my son.
Rathma, the first necromancer.
He is that, and more. He is the key to my plans.
It sounds like they're searching for Lilith's son, Rathma. Mother, what are you thinking? I'm out of essence.
again. Does Lilith know we're coming?
You've mastered your fear, but I still sense your pain. You miss your daughter.
My magpie. She's scared right now. She must be.
Go. Or stay. It is time to choose.
I trained her well. She's a good kid. Strong. She'll be all right.
You've chosen well, my child. To reach Rathma, we will need to cross a lake at the bottom of these ruins. It requires a ritual. I will teach you.
As you wish, Mother.
Good. You're ready for lesson 1. Blood is the key.
What did you see this time? I don't need sparing. Tell me.
Lilith plans to teach your mother a ritual. One that needs blood. Your mother seemed receptive.
We have to reach them. looks like the same kind of magic as before. I think I can dispel it.
Not enough blood. Never enough blood. I will follow you to the ends of Sanctuary, Mother.
There she is. Mother?
Nerel. You're just in time. Beyond this lake lies the necropolis of the Firstborn. A trove of magic and knowledge. I opened the way for Lilith. But I could not pass through with her. I lack divine element, you see.
Stop.
But I can find it. I'm so close. I simply need...
Mother, stop! Look at what Lilith has done to you. You're writing in your own blood.
My little magpie. She awakened me. She showed me things I can't even put into words. Once I've finished, you will understand.
I don't care what she showed you. Please, let's just get out of here.
Oh, I see. Yes, clever magpie. Trying to lead me away so you can take all this for yourself. This is my discovery, not yours. I will finish these runes with your blood!
You must stop this!
Look at the gifts she's given me.
I'm out of essence.
Mother, no!
You won't take what's mine.
protecting me. I don't want to hate you. I'm trying. I really am. We're going to make Lilith pay for what she's done. So we need blessed blood. Go back to your Prava. Get that blessing. Beg if you need to. Whatever it takes. My mother started this damn ritual. I'm going to finish it. Meet me in the Mistral Woods.
Why there?
The Horadrim hid a vault there. Finding it was her life's work. So much for that. Maybe it will help with the ritual. If not, at least I can bury her where she'd want. I need time. I'm sorry. Just leave me.
See that the kitchen is ready for tomorrow's service. Angels above, you've returned! The Reverend Mother will want to hear of this, but she's away at Corvalar. Seek your blessing there. Everything is unfolding as Inarius foretold. Soon, he will be free to escape Sanctuary and return to the heavens where he belongs.
My burden is too great.
Let's have a look at you, Buckles need reinforcing. This leather's cracked. What have you been getting yourself into, huh? Look, you live or die by the quality of your equipment. If you've the coin and materials, I can improve it for you.
What will it be?
Well, you certainly have the look of someone who spends a lot of time in the wilds. I expect you'll also want some of my elixirs, but let's focus on your healing potion for now. I have some extra materials we can use this time. If you want to improve your healing potion further or craft any elixirs, you'll need to source your own ingredients. I'll not leave these walls. Never again. Light keep you.
Oh my gosh. That literally scared the crap out of me when I saw this the first time. And these comments are something else. The barber, when you take a little off the side. Bro didn't pay his bill, so he had to take them away. Well, Frodo Bentis, what is going on here, and why is this man getting his teeth shattered out of his face? These are either old crowns or veneers that need to be redone, and so he's taking them off, or they're temporary. You see, when we first do your crowns or veneers or whatever it is, we prep it, but we have to get something there before the lab can make your final crown. So we put these temporary veneers or crowns on there. And when we're done, well, we gotta get them off somehow. So what we do is we make that little line right down the middle to kind of make it easier, and then we pop them right off by twisting motion. It just shatters them into pieces. And for those asking what this metal thing is down below, sometimes we have porcelain fused to metal crowns, and so that's the metal housing on the bottom, and the porcelain goes on top over that.
One single use, even at tier 40 plus nightmare dungeons. It creates a very satisfying feeling of walking around and controlling a fight, setting up shortly, and then landing an outrageously strong burst of damage. This cleans out groups of enemies so effectively, especially those really strong elites that can be a pain, like for me as a range build normally, having to deal with the nightmare affix suppressors, well, it just crunches those. You can improve its mob clear through uniques such as the chest piece we're going to talk about that provides a bone spirit for free when you pick up some blood orbs. Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and it's finally time to talk about the true endgame Necromancer. I'm now level 74 and at this point I've got my ideal setup. The main unique, the right weapon, it's all hitting really hard. Our Bone Spear is able to hit ticks of 600k and higher casually, constantly. The incredible thing about that is it's hitting multiple times per Bone Spear, so what's actually happening is we're hitting millions per multiple uses, up to the tens of millions extremely quickly, so the DPS is insane. And we're doing it from range, which is no small thing. At this point, I just need to re-roll my equipment to reach, say, peak ideal skills for very slight damage increases, but then there's a long-term aspect to consider before that, which is in tiers 40 plus and beyond in Nightmare dungeons, we have to focus
In this Diablo IV video, I'll be showing you the Blight Summoner build or Blight Commander build. This is a beginner Necromancer build that focuses on damage over time and summoning. This is an updated version of the Blight Commander build that we made for the beta that is for the full release of the game, including everything that's included now. This build is aimed at World Tiers 1 and 2, and it's just to kind of help you get started playing this style of play as a Necromancer as you level up in World Tier 1 and 2 and kind of make your way through Sanctuary. So the general strategy for this build is to start by deploying Blight into packs of enemies. Doing so will deal massive damage over time in a decent-sized AoE. This major skill will also slow them down and further boost your and your minions' overall damage by 15%. Since Blight requires Essence, you're going to want to drain this resource and then switch over to using Corpse Explosion. By this time, you'll have enough corpses on the ground to detonate them into more AoE dot puddles. Going back to restoring Essence, you'll be casting Decompose all throughout. It also amplifies your damage, making another decent way to destroy multiple enemies on the floor as they're getting demolished by Blight and Corpse Explosions. A great aspect that goes well with this skill is the flesh-rending aspect, which when you summon a corpse with Decompose, you gain additional essence, which will then factor into using Blight more frequently. Remember that poisons in this game stack, so as you stack damage over time effects on enemies, you can repeatedly stack the same skill's damage over time over and over, allowing you to really rip off a lot of health. For elites and bosses, you'll bombard them with your powerful skeleton warriors, skeleton mages, and your golem. With passives that improve the damage and life of skeleton warriors and the golem's inherent tankiness, you're certain to destroy strong opponents quickly. Of course, this works well on top of constantly casting Blight, Decompose, and Corpse Explosion. So let's move on to the skills that we use for this build. We use Decompose. This is our basic skill, and it's the best one to choose for this build. By default, you restore 7 essence every second while spawning a corpse every 2.5 seconds. Not only can you trigger Blight more often, but you'll end up having a lot of corpses to use Corpse Explosion more often as well. For upgrades, you want the Enhanced Decompose and Acolyte's Decompose upgrades. Enhanced Decompose lets you gain additional essence when an affected target dies, whereas Acolyte's Decompose improves your and your summon's damage against them. You should activate this skill when your essence reserve is low and when you see enemies with low health. Using Decompose on them will net you an extra 10 essence. Remember to complete the Nostrava Deepwood Dungeon in Fractured Peaks to acquire the flesh-rending aspect in order to generate more of this resource when spawning a corpse. An aspect that would work well with Decompose is the rotting aspect as well. This gives you a high chance to create another corpse, allowing you to keep on using Corpse Explosion. However, the rotting aspect can only be extracted from legendary items, but note this is not mandatory for this build. Next we have Blight. Blight is your go-to core skill for this build, and it's going to allow you to not only deal a little
What's going on, guys? So I am going to be making a video talking about my summoning necromancer build because I get a lot of questions on the build while I'm live streaming, and there isn't that many skeletal summoning necromancer builds out there. There's a lot on Bone Spear, there's a lot on Bone Spirit, sacrificing minions for damage, the Sever summoning build, and there's many variations, but this is the one that I currently use because this is the one that I fell into while leveling up my character, creating my own way and making decisions that benefited the character based off the gear that I have and the aspects that I use. I also do play Witch in Path of Exile as a summoner, and I also played Diablo II back in the day as a necromancer, so it's just a little nostalgic for me to try to get the army of the dead into the end game and make it somewhat useful instead of sacrificing them all the time. Before we dive deep into the skill tree, the paragons, and the aspects, and how you actually build this character, I'm going to show you guys exactly how it works and why it works. So this is a summoning necromancer build that is kind of disguised as a corpse explosion build. So all of your summons and a lot of your abilities are going to be creating corpses, and through those corpses you are going to be generating your essence, healing your skeletons, and doing your damage. And anytime that you have full essence, which is basically the necromancer's mana, you will be dumping your Bone Spear, which is going to be creating more vulnerable enemies, thus increasing the damage of Bone Spear. This build is certainly not a let's jump into the middle of the crap and see if we can survive it. It's definitely about positioning yourself behind and around your skeletons so they can take the initial aggression from the monsters, allowing you to cast Corpse Explosion freely or hit them with the Bone Spear. I typically try to save my essence for elites. And
hello and welcome back to Rage. One single use, even at tier 40 plus. Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. My name is Hollow and it's time to talk Bone Spirit. This build is considered one of the strongest builds around for its raw damage, and it's finally time for me to try it out and make my own version. To cut to the chase, as you can see, Bone Spirit is nuts. It hits for like 5+ million damage every single hit with this build, which of course murders next to everything in one single use, even at tier 40+ nightmare dungeons. It creates a very satisfying feeling of walking around and controlling a fight, setting up shortly, and then landing an outrageously strong burst of damage. This cleans out groups of enemies so effectively, especially those really strong elites that can be a pain, like for me as a range build normally, having to deal with the Nightmare affix suppressors, well, it just crunches those. You can improve its mob clear through uniques, such as the chest piece we're going to talk about, that provides a Bone Spirit for free when you pick up some blood orbs. But it's not perfect. The setup requires careful play, which is certainly more effort than its competitor, the Bone Spear build. Some people do call the Bone Spirit build the natural progression of Bone Spear, because the numbers are simply bigger, but I think there's more to it than that. Overall, I am extremely impressed with its damage and general gameplay. I'm really enjoying playing it, just dealing so much damage in one button press. It's so satisfying to take, say, a tier 40+ final boss and just one-shot it. In general, it's a nice change of pace from Bone Spear, and it's very clearly competitive. I'd rate both builds as top tier, easily the best two options for Necromancer. How do I rate them against each other? Well, let's explain the build and how to play it, and at the end, we'll talk about that conclusion. We'll do a quick rundown of the talent tree and get into everything from there. We pick up Reap, enhance it, and then go for Acolyte's Reap so that we can spawn a corpse consistently with this attack every 5 seconds. It also works as nice essence generation in dire situations. On the next tier, we pick up 3 out of 3 Unliving Energy as always to improve our maximum essence, and with Spirit compared to Spear, we don't need imperfectly balanced because it's not a core skill. Of course, we're going to pick up Hued Flesh to get some corpses spawning whenever relevant, but we move on to the next tier here where we actually pick up 1 level of Blood Mist and go for the Enhance and then go for Dreadful Blood Mist. This actually gives us some Fortify, which is going to reduce damage taken by 10% while fortified, and there are ways this will even increase our damage. It's nice survivability though when you come out of the Blood Mist. You can see that I've got 2 levels in it, not 1 like I just mentioned. That's because it's kind of a final point that we'll mention at the end. And of course we also pick up Bone Prison here. It's also a massive essence generator, and we can also make them vulnerable, making them take 20% increased damage, which is a nice way to get that in this build. In the next tree, we're just picking up Death's Embrace. Close enemies deal 9% less damage to us for some survivability, and also the 6% times increase to damage, which is awesome. On the next tree, this is where we spend most of our points. First up, Corpse Tendrils. We 5 out of 5 this because that lowers its cooldown. This is basically something we want to use on cooldown, so reducing the cooldown is great. But it's also key to how we get crit chance, which we'll talk about, and it provides some CC and stun, which is awesome when enhanced, and provides us with blood orbs at a 30% rate when used. You use that on a pack of enemies, that's a lot of blood orbs, and that is relevant. We also, of course, in the Bone Spirit build, pick up 5 levels of Bone Spirit. As you can see, I'm at rank 11 out of 5 though, and that's for a good reason. We'll talk about that in the gear section. So we enhance it, which helps reduce cooldown on crits, and then we go for Dreadful Bone Spirit. This is because when you use a Bone Spirit, it consumes all of your essence. But with this perk, you get 30 back in the next 4 seconds, and there are ways to enhance that. We also pick up all 12 points of the bone passives: Incineration, in Compound Fracture, in Evulsion, and Rapid Ossification. This helps with crit chance. The higher your essence, the more crit chance there is, increasing bone skill damage by a multiplier, increasing damage by a multiplier to vulnerable, and Rapid Ossification, which as we spend 100 essence, we reduce the cooldown of bone skills, such as Bone Spirit, Bone Prison, Bone Storm. This is an amazing skill because we use all of our essence anyway when we use any Bone Spirit, so this is always working. And lastly, in this tree, we're also picking up 3 out of 3 Necrotic Carapace, giving us further fortified. Survivability is going to be really important. On the next tree for the ultimates, of course, we're picking up Bone Storm and enhancing it to make it a damage reduction while active, and the 20% increase to crit strike chance. This helps us get to 100% crit consistently. It's a sacrifice build, so stand alone to reduce damage, and of course, improving the benefits of sacrifice bonuses. Finally, the key passive, Ossified Essence, is going to radically increase our damage when we are above 50 essence and even more at max. This all leaves us with 1 point spare, and that's why I dump it into Blood Mist, as it does slightly reduce the cooldown. Then we have the Book of the Dead, which is actually the same as my Bone Spear build. For the warriors, we pick Defenders to give us some extra resistance. I will highlight that if you're struggling for crit, which you shouldn't be when playing this build, but if you are, you could go the Skirmishers for 5% there. For the Skeletal Mages, we're going Shadow to improve our maximum essence. The higher essence we have, the more damage we do. And then finally Golem, no surprise there. It's still the Iron Golem for the 30% times increased crit damage. It's insane. But now we come come to the interesting one, the Paragon boards, where I've got a lot to say about glyphs. Either way, for the beginner board, we make our way up and to the right to pick up the Prime node, coming around and up to the glyph, where I have Territorial, which is a phenomenal damage reduction against close enemies perk. We need survivability in general as a Necromancer, and especially in the higher tiers of 40+. It also increases your damage to close enemies the more decks you have, and that is fantastic. However, I will actually move this glyph later on, as we'll talk about. Either way, I come up to the right and pick up Preservation, and then move around to the left and pick up Knowledge, and leave the board to our first board upgrade. At which point, we're going to be picking up the legendary node or legendary board, Bone Graft. Just like Bone Spear, it's basically the same thing. Hitting enemies with bone skills increases your damage by 1% and your maximum essence, which is obviously phenomenal for the Bone Spirit build. To get that, we just come around to the right, picking up, say, Entomb, as well as the legendary node itself. Then we come up and around and come to Calcified. Before progressing on, we come down and to the left to Reinvigorate, improving our maximum essence, which is amazing, and providing Essence on Kill, which is majorly how we recover Bone Spirit's expense of all of your essence when you use it. So we pick up all the magic nodes here to help with Essence on Kill and maximum essence. Then we come up to the glyph socket, working our way up like so, and eventually coming around to the left to activate it. Here we have the no-brainer choice for this build, Grave Keeper. It improves your bone skill damage, it provides intelligence, and for every close corpse, massively improves your damage, 12% times a multiplier, and it's above 10%, which is the cap you normally see. So this is a huge damage increase because we're not using corpse explosion, meaning there are corpses around us pretty much constantly. It's only a 25 dex requirement, so you pick up all the dex around that, and of course we come up to Shaper of Bone to grab that for more bone skill damage, and of course I pick up this node for the extra resistances. Once I get this to level 15, I will be further picking up more dexterity nodes. Once we're done with that though, we come down to the left to get our third board. This board is the Scent of Death board. This legendary node is really cool. With at least 2 corpses nearby, you gain 15% damage reduction. Just flat 15%. That's amazing, and a huge survivability perk when we really need it as a Necromancer. With no corpses nearby, you deal 15% increased damage, and that's a multiplier, so that can be absolutely outrageous. It's true that most of the time there's going to be corpses near you, but to start a fight, there's a good chance you use Reap to spawn 1, then you'll corpse tendrils to pull, then there will be no corpses as you Bone Spirit, which will massively increase the damage of that initial opening Bone Spirit. That's incredible. And we'll go further on that as we originally enter the board by going down and working our way down to Ruin, which as you can see deals 25% increased damage to healthy enemies. This is really cool because we don't really have any extra damage to healthy enemies normally, so even though it's additive, 25% to nothing is actually a lot. So your opening Bone Spirit of the fight will absolutely crush with the benefit of Ruin and effects like that, such as no corpses being nearby as well. Either way, we're going to pick up all the magic nodes around that, come around and actually pick up the legendary node itself, then come to the left and actually get to the glyph. Here I'm picking up Undaunted. This is for a very specific reason. Originally, I wanted to pick up Exploit. It basically enhances your damage to vulnerable targets, which is great, but it requires 25 dex. On this board, there is not 25 dex to pick up until you enhance the radius to actually reach further, and then there'll be enough dex. And the thing is, I'm absolutely crushing enemies anyway, so I don't really need more damage. What I kind of need is survivability. So as a filler slot, I found that Undaunted is actually great because I'm fortified constantly in this build. It means I get an extra 10% damage reduction for the more fortified that I have. And it also increases my damage when fortified, which is nice, but not that important. So here's where it gets interesting. What am I going to do now, as that is a temporary slot, and the fact that I want to move Territorial? The Sacrificial glyph is easily one of the strongest just straight consistent damage increases. You deal 10% times increased damage while you have no active minions. That is a massive damage increase permanently because we don't have any minions in this build, but it requires plus 40 intelligence, which is so much. And in most cases, pretty much all, you will not be able to get plus 40 of any stat without improving the radius of that glyph. So this needs to be at least level 15 upgraded before you can really get the true value of this. So I use these glyphs I've just shown you, and once that's in place, I will begin upgrading Sacrificial. When that's at plus 15, I'm going to slot that here where Territorial is and move Territorial into the place of Undaunted. That will provide us with a massive DPS increase. But in the meantime, I still want to get good benefits that are activating with just 25 stats, so that's how I've done it. When I finally get enough Paragon points to get to a 4th board and have completed my first 3 as well, I'm going to have a 4th glyph slot. The question is, will I go offensive or will I go defensive? So depending on that, I'm going to pick from 2 options. I'm going to recommend either Blood Drinker, which causes blood orbs to fortify you, which we generate a bunch of them whenever we do Corpse Tendrils. That's a really nice defensive option if you need it, which you probably will as you go into tiers 50 and beyond in the Nightmare Dungeons. Or Control, which increases your damage dealt to crowd control targets and 10% times increases your damage to slowed or chilled enemies, or 20% times increase to stunned or frozen. So when you pull in with Corpse Tendrils, you're going to absolutely destroy anything hit. It's a question of, do you want more damage or do you want more survivability? To be honest, I think you're going to want the survivability in the mega high tier Nightmare Dungeons, but everywhere else, you might want Control. Alright, time for the big one. It's the equipment. Starting with a weapon. You're going to want a 2-hand weapon because, like the Bone Spear build, you want as much crit strike damage as you can get, and a 2-handed sword provides that as its main passive. As you can see, plus 52.5% critical strike damage. That's amazing. We want a 2-handed sword. Of course, we want to improve our Corpse Tendrils as much as possible, so it goes on a 2-handed weapon. Grasping Veins, the aspect, gives you up to 40% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds whenever you cast a Corpse Tendrils, which we should be doing constantly. This is a major boost to our crit strike chance, and we want 100% pretty much the whole time, and this is vital for that. Further, it means we get to deal up to 120% times increased critical strike damage to those damaged by Corpse Tendrils, so this is ludicrous and easily the thing we want on our weapon. On our helm, we have the all-important Disobedience aspect, providing us with a nice spike of armor whenever we deal damage, stacking up, keeping us alive, and allowing us to tank. And I just realized that I completely forgot to socket my chest, so that's not good, so I've just done that. Speaking of our chest, it's a unique chest, the Blood Artisans. When you pick up Blood Orbs, a free Bone Spirit will be spawned, dealing bonus damage based on your current life percent. So the healthier you are, the harder it hits, but it's ultimately not usually as strong as your normal Bone Spirit. This is a very powerful unique because it's going to massively enhance your clear time for general mob clear, but you're going to be sacrificing some survivability. The aspect I was running prior to this, just like on my Bone Spear build, was the Shielding Storm perk, where it makes our Bone Storm not only reduce the damage we take while it's active, but also provide up to a 5% barrier of our base life for 10 seconds. That is very good, very powerful mitigation. Or you can get a different type of barrier, such as the Protector aspect, generating a very solid barrier depending on your role for 10 seconds every time you damage an elite enemy, and that can happen every 30 seconds. Either of these is going to be a great way to get some mitigation through barriers. I'm having to sacrifice that mitigation to have this unique on. It's undeniable that this is increasing my damage because it gives me 3 to 4 ranks of Bone Spirit, which is insane, and an extra Bone Spirit pretty regularly for a free burst. But as I go into higher tiers of Nightmare Dungeons, I'm finding I need more and more survivability, and having this mitigation from either of these aspects is definitely desirable. So I have to play extra careful when I'm missing that and using this unique. I hope that helps you feel a bit assured that you don't necessarily need this. Of course, it's a damage increase and improves your clear, but it might be, in many cases, better to have more mitigation. Next is the gloves. Another no-brainer here. The Retribution aspect is nuts for this type of build. You're dealing increased damage to stunned enemies. We are stunning enemies before blasting them with Bone Spirit. This is just ridiculous. Up to 40% times increased damage to stunned enemies is insane. Next, my next unique, Temerity. This provides me with a barrier. As I overheal from, say, picking up those blood orbs, I can get up to 80% of my maximum life as a shield for 8 seconds, and that happens a lot. So if you don't have this unique, you could pop on one of these defensive aspects, as I've mentioned, to help get some mitigation in this slot. But of course, this is a great unique for defense. Then we have the boots. Nothing too interesting about this one. We have Explosive Mist, which basically means my Blood Mist, my iframe, can pop corpses for damage. And more importantly, it reduces its cooldown slightly per every single corpse we use. So it just helps us get our iframe back more often, and that also provides some Fortify. So it's nice synergy, but it's not amazing. But it's about the best we can get. So next we have the Amulet. Of course, we're going for Serration, just like the Bone Spear build. This can nearly double your damage by having it. You want as high as roll as possible, and we want to improve the power of this effect by putting it on the amulet. It'd be great if we could have it on the weapon, but we kind of have a more important aspect there. Then we have the rings, where I actually don't have the ideal setup. I just can't seem to get what I want to drop. Here I have the Loop of Torment, which is going to enhance our essence regen by up to 30% times for 4 seconds. That's obviously really helpful because we need loads of resource generation in this build. But just as I explained in my Bone Spear endgame build, the aspect of Umbral is better, providing 1 to 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. If you roll, say, a 3 or 4 version of this aspect, that is going to be significantly more essence than the Loop of Torment and its effect there. The problem is I just can't seem to get one to drop, and so the Codex version of the aspect only providing 1 isn't that great, and I think this is better. So if you have the Umbral, use it if you've got a good roll. Lastly, the exposed flesh aspect is another no-brainer, up to a 10% chance to generate essence when hitting a vulnerable enemy with your bone skills. So we pull in the enemies, we bone prison them to make them vulnerable, and then we blast them, which then provides us with a shed load of essence instantly. This is absolutely required for this build in my opinion. I also want to highlight something that probably will come up in the comments. The Swelling Curse aspect improves the damage of Bone Spirit. You'd think I would have this, right? It increases the damage it deals based on distance traveled. The problem is we're walking up very close to the stunned targets to blow them up, minimizing how powerful this actually would be. And we would have to give up another aspect of which there are none I'm willing to give up. So for me, I like the idea of this, I just can't fit it into the build. But now it's time for us to talk about the skills on your equipment. There is a lot of different skills you want and in fact require for this build to work. You need enough critical strike chance to make this work in the first place, so you're always, next to always, critting with your Bone Spirit. Otherwise it's literally not worth using. So if you can get crit strike chance on anything, get it. Second to improving your crit strike chance, you want to improve your crit strike damage like we have on our weapon here, and of course damage to stunned enemies, which we're stunning all the time. When it comes to resource generation skills then, you want maximum essence #1 priority, and then anything that helps with resource generation, if it's flat resource generation or chance to give you resource. For damage reduction, you want raw damage reduction or reduced from close enemies, reduced from far, or while fortified, or max health increases. Core stats is always going to be intelligence priority, then dex and will after that, and reroll any strength. Then we have the all important skill increases like +4 ranks to corpse tendrils and +3 ranks to bone spirit that I have on my boots here. This is insane. Boots is the best one for this. This is where you can get the most levels of this type of thing for this build. I actually got +3 ranks of bone spirit on this, then rerolled another skill to find corpse tendrils, and we got +4. So I am thrilled with this piece. And then the other thing you'd be looking for is cooldown reduction to help you always have bone spirit ready and reduce your major cooldowns of bone prison, bone storm, that type of thing, corpse tendrils, as much as you can. For gems, you can see that I'm still using rubies in my armor for max life. We improve our overall health, which is amazing, and the more health you have, the bigger the shields, I believe, that generated from your health pool. We have sapphires in our weapon to improve our crit strike damage to crowd control enemies, and still skulls in the jewelry for the armor that provides. Now let's cover how this actually works and the gameplay behind it. I'm going to do this quick and then I'll explain it slow. Basically, we're going to use Reap to spawn a corpse, pull them in, Bone Storm and Bone Prison, and then smash them with our Spirit. So as you can see, I'm going to generate a corpse with the Reap, pull them in, buff up, smash them, prison them, and then hit them with the Bone. The Bone Spirit, which they're already dead because these are normal enemies. So let's look at footage of actual gameplay. So as you can see, with an actual pack of really scary elites and a proper high tier dungeon, I'm setting up the fight, generating some corpses through Reap or other methods, corpse tendriling to pull them in, which skyrockets my crit chance, and depending on the situation, I will have begun the fight with a Bone Storm to give me some damage reduction, or pop it at this point to increase my crit strike chance if they're a high health enemy like a boss or scary elite. If I want to full commit, I will pull them in and then bone prison them to make them vulnerable to increase my damage, again if they're really scary elites or bosses in high tiers, and if I want to generate a lot of essence immediately after killing whatever's alive because I think there's another pack coming quick. This can happen with events where you kill a pack of enemies and then another one spawns immediately. After that, there are two options. The first option is to use a few Reaps while pulling in with my next corpse tendrils to generate essence. The stun lasts quite a while actually, so I have plenty of time to slap them with Reaps and get lots of essence if I'm in a bad situation and have to do that. Or most often, I'll just walk around or through the pack of enemies picking up blood orbs. This, with my unique chest, will send out some free bone spirits and destroy anything alive. If it's a pack of enemies, I can dash through them to do that, or I can just blood mist to iframe and ghost walk through them. So yeah, it's spawn a corpse using Reap or other methods, pull them in with the corpse tendrils of that, then decide how hard are you going to go. Will they all die with a Bone Spirit here? Or will you need to buff up with Bone Storm? Will you need to Bone Prism? Will you need to do both? In high tiers, it can be pretty scary, and I try to have Bone Storm pretty much active at the beginning of every fight with elites, because otherwise I might die and I need that damage reduction. It's up to you to work out how hard you need to commit to each Bone Spirit cast, but the main priority is keeping yourself alive, because usually Bone Spirit with just Corpse Tendril Pull is enough to kill everything. But there you have it. It's time for a conclusion on this. I think this build is fantastic, and I'm really enjoying playing it. But is it better than Bone Spear? Well, Bone Spirit obviously hits harder. It one-shots. It has way higher burst potential. And as you can see, it one-shots final bosses in higher tier dungeons. At face value, this is just better. But Bone Spirit requires more setup. With Bone Spear, you can just kind of throw them. Of course, you want to do things to enhance the damage, but there's nothing wrong with just throwing them, spreading vulnerability, and destroying everything. It's more consistent DPS, basically. Also, you can use Bone Spear more at range, which can keep you alive in the scarier tiers. Further, I believe Bone Spirit runs at a generally slower pace, which will be worse at lower levels of gameplay where there's not really any threat. But I actually think it becomes more impactful and a good thing in the higher tiers of Nightmare Dungeons, the true end game of this gameplay, where going slow is going to happen anyway because you need to clear mobs and packs to make sure that you don't die. So the faster pace of Bone Spear won't really matter there, will it? I think Bone Spirit is a harder build to play, but a very high potential rewarding build. Bone Spear is generally smoother and faster at mob clear, but just won't hit as hard. I would recommend you try both to get an idea of how they both feel and pick the one that you like best. But just keep in mind, Bone Spirit takes a bit more to learn and is harder to play, so don't judge either of them until you're actually good at both of them. But yeah, that's Bone Spirit and my endgame build currently of it. I hope the information in this was useful to you. I spent all day working on this. There's still more that I'd like to test, like I say, with different Paragon boards and certain glyph combinations. But if you have any extra advice for other Necromancer players, then you can drop it in the comments. You might just help someone. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.
The truth of Diablo IV after level 82. How I actually feel.
Let's talk about how I honestly feel in Diablo 4. I've gotten to level 82. I have basically completed my renown at this point.
There it is.
I have got all the altars of Lilith. Obviously beat the campaign and all of them in World Tier 4. My gear is looking pretty stout. I don't really know what left I could really farm at this point other than experience and do the Pinnacle boss and, you know, like a few other things at the moment. I farmed, God knows, too many legendaries, done a bunch of PvP. You can see I got some ears in here too. I've been doing PvP, been playing with friends. I've also been playing solo. So I've had a pretty good amount of experience, and this is coming from a druid's perspective. Now, I have seen a lot of feedback related to this game, both extremely positive as well as extremely negative, and I have yet to find too much of good, nuanced conversation around the good and the bad around this game. I'm going to do my very best to ride that line fairly. So let's talk about the good first and what I like about the game. I think the game, people say, is overwhelmingly complicated, but I actually think it's fairly decently simple. I think the skill tree isn't too confusing. It looks very confusing at the beginning, but legitimately all of these are linear. So this
I don't think the skill tree is complex enough. Personally, I wish that there was another fork for each of these different spells. Like maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe it's too complex at that point. But like personally, I'd like to see a little bit more. It's my opinion.
This isn't something where you really have to worry about matching things too much. I think the Paragon board looks very confusing until you actually try using it, and then you realize, yes, it's still a little bit confusing, but it's not really as bad as it seems. If you can understand 90-degree angles and turning things, you can basically understand a Paragon board once you actually get your hands on it. Just looking at it, it looks very confusing. The way items work, the way legendaries work, the way uniques work, the way you acquire these all seem decently well explained. Though, and I will say there are some things, for instance, like aspects having different tiers. For instance, the ancestral and the sacred being different colors and literally named different. Offensive aspect of the Raging. This is an ancestral legendary, but this one is a sacred legendary. And having
ancestral is tier 4, I believe, and sacred is tier 3.
Absolute, basically no difference. in terms of what these items actually do, I think can also be extremely confusing as well. For instance, I have very often seen people say things like ancestral legendary aspects are better than normal. See how this one, it goes 1 to 5 seconds and is a maximum row of 5 seconds. But then this is a normal legendary ring that goes 1 to 5 seconds as well. It just says 3 there. And the reason people don't even realize it goes all the way to 5 seconds is because they have their tooltips off. So, and this is by default. So they have their advanced tooltips off by default. Shout out to Woody Joe actually for informing me about this, because I didn't know this originally. And then they see it says 3 seconds here as well. And they think that one's lower than...
It's just casual players don't know shit about the game, right? Like, I feel like if you... It would be nice if you could hold down Alt or Control whenever you mouse over something, and Alt or Control would enable the advanced tooltips for that item.
My aspect, that's 5. So Ancestral is higher. And so there's a lot of misinformation and confusion coming from a large amounts of players in the game, and that can get spread. So I do think there are some things that are fairly poorly explained in the game. However, once you understand the fundamentals of the mechanic, it becomes significantly more enjoyable.
Also, being crowd controlled. I don't think it's adequately explained what being crowd controlled means. I think that if you asked 100 people, what does being crowd controlled mean? You would not get 100 of the same answer. Or would you count, like, let's say a 10% slow or a taunt as crowd control, or would you count a stun as crowd control? Right? You see kind of what I'm saying? Because like in Diablo 4, any type of crowd control is the same thing. So like a lot of barbarians, for example, go with hamstring. Hamstring makes bleeds slow you. And guess what? Now you just take advantage of 100% crowd control uptime. Both you have soft CC and hard CC. Yeah, but I think if you ask somebody, like, would you consider, like, would they consciously acknowledge that, like, a 10% slow would count as CC? I bet a lot of people wouldn't think that.
I do think there is something to be said for the world's size. I feel like the actual size of the world, the fact that there's these Legion events, which, by the way, you can farm free horse cosmetic from here that's like a ghost horse. Really cool. I think that the actual size of the map is significant. When I'm teleporting around the different areas, I do feel the variety in terms of what the landscape looks like. I do think it is fair to say that what a lot of people, the feedback I have read, is that people were surprised that so many of the minions look alike. This is true. It is a Diablo game. Hell is running over, and a lot of the demons are twins, apparently. So I do believe that
this is how it was in Diablo 4 or Diablo 3. I didn't play all the way through Diablo 2. I'm not sure. Most games have, I mean, like Elden Ring has rerun characters. I mean, it is what it is.
Something to be said for that. I don't know how you fix that within the ARPG hack and slash genre, to be fair, but I do understand that criticism, and I accept that. Now, in terms of the early, mid, and late game, I would like to get into that feedback as well. I think the early game is the most exciting. You're pushing through the story. What you're trying to do is fairly well explained. I'll
also reiterate, the early game experience for barbarians and druids is bad. I think it is infinitely less fun than a sorcerer or a rogue. They are worse for no reason. It doesn't need to be that way. Just change the modifiers on the spells. Problem solved.
To do the yellow stories, they are very easily marked. There is good story dialogue. There is very good voice acting.
Yes.
This is Blizzard after all, so there's also very good cutscenes. Me personally, I found some of the boss fights to be way better than some of the other boss fights. I'll put it that way in order to keep the spoilers free. However, I have heard mixed reviews on the boss fights, so I will take that one under advisement, as this is just my own personal opinion. I think it is not clear upon meeting...
I think it's kind of fair. Like, I'm just going to leak this. If you don't want a spoiler, too bad. Ashava, the world boss, is like one of the last bosses in the campaign. That wasn't super cool. That was dumb.
Playing the game, what to do after the campaign, and I actually believe this is a good thing. I think the fact that it does not immediately tell you, go and farm nightmare dungeons, go and max your renown, but instead you get the sense of the world has opened up to you, I actually enjoy that a good deal. I am an old school RuneScape player. I've played RuneScape since 2001 when it came out from Devious Mud. I'm actually older than I look, to be honest with you guys. So for that reason, I very much enjoy open world. I do not like hand-holding. I like games that give me a character, and I feel like I am brutally trying to survive within the elements around me and figure out what's going on in the game. So I like that. The only thing I don't like is terrible, trashy UIs and bad quality of life. I will say the UIs could be improved. I'm not calling them trashy. I'm saying those are things I don't like.
What do I have to say? The thing that everybody else is saying. Where the fuck is the gem tab, Blizzard? Come on. Like, what is this? What do we need? Like, we need a tab for consumables, but we don't have a tab for gems? Oh my god. It's just such a waste of space. It sucks. Just give us a gem tab. It should have happened in, and no, I don't want it to be a DLC, because then I owe that guy $500. Remember? I bet against that. No, just put it in the game. Just say, hey guys, we hear you. You want gem tabs? All right, we're going to do it.
There's aspects of that I don't like. I would say right now, having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 gem slots all slotted up with gems is extremely annoying. Having no gem bag is extremely annoying. And having inventory space, you guys saw already my, let me walk over here and show you. You guys already saw my storage stash. And having a storage stash that is completely full with legendaries is very annoying. You might think, okay, this sounds
I wish we had more storage room.
Like suffering some success. Oh, damn, you got so many legendaries, you know, fuck you. But that's not what I'm saying. I cannot not pick these up if I want to. These are forced to be picked up to me, unfortunately. I'm going to turn the alerts off so I don't keep spamming. Unfortunately here, these are forced for me to acquire. The reason is if a legendary drops in the field and I do not want that legendary and I leave the dungeon, when I go to my stash, that legendary shows up right here. And it gives me two options. I can either put it in my inventory or I can put it in the stash. Does not give me an auto salvage ability, does not give me anything like that. Also, the stash has no way for me to filter or search through, basically forcing me to go and hit the sort button in order to make them sort by type and then look through all the chest plates, etc. until I find one I want. So very often...
That's true. It would be nice if we had a search function. Yeah. It would just make the game better. That's it.
Then what I find myself doing is not wanting to look through 3,000 different items to find min-max rows from these tiny little texts that my eyes are blurring from playing the game 24 hours a day literally anyway. So instead I'm just crunching everything and not giving a fuck. So I think that that is probably some poor gameplay design in terms of the stash and the UI with these items. Now, that is going to be probably my primary negative feedback. There's one other point I would like to make, which is the dungeons. There are a lot of them. You are not required to clear all of them, but there are plenty of codexes here I have already done, as you can see, and there are plenty more still left.
I find the dungeon system to be totally fine and completely okay. However, if Blizzard asks me to refarm all of these things, I will probably do it once for Season 1, and afterwards I will probably never play Diablo IV again. Because if I have to refarm 115 different dungeons and farm out that much renown, that's not fun. There were many leagues in PoE that I just didn't play the league because I thought about all of the different, like, oh, so then I have to get the Conqueror Stones, and then there's the Watch Stones, and then I have to level up the Watch Stones, and then I have to kill the Conquerors in a different level, and then do the maps, and I'm just, oh, fuck, well, I'm just gonna play WoW. You know, like, it's just not a good time. Conquerors are shit, yeah.
I do like the variety of having the legendary aspects at a minimum row. I think that's smart. So there is still a way and a reason to farm normal legendaries and not just use codex for everything. But this also makes certain builds more viable early and allows certain types of players to be able to build certain types of classes earlier than otherwise would have been possible with just pure RNG of getting the legendary items. This is almost like sort of being able to craft legendaries or set items from Diablo 3. This is the way of guaranteeing certain items. I think this was probably a necessity to keep players encouraged because of the difficulty of the game. Now, speaking of the difficulty of the game, I've seen mixed opinions. I've seen people speaking that the game plays very slow, that the gameplay is very hard, it is very brutal, and I enjoy that, is what people will say. Then I will see people that say this is way too easy, I'm blasting through everything, I got to in-game in 2 days, and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do now. So
That's where I'm at. I'm going to be honest, I one-shot Lilith. I didn't even die. I died once on the capstone dungeon, and this is on tier 2, because I didn't know where he would teleport on top of me and then do like the 3-prong attack. I didn't think he was going to do it twice. It killed me once, and that was it. Then I went back, I killed it, it was easy. I didn't even try to get my gear. I didn't upgrade anything. I just went in raw, and that was it. And this is on World Tier 2 as Barbarian, as Whirlwind build. I don't really think it was that hard. All of the Nightmare dungeons I've done after that have been pretty easy too. I don't struggle at all. I think the difficulty is fine though. Because I played Barbarian in, I didn't play Barbarian, I played like a fucking, it was like Chieftain and shit like that in PoE before, Shadow, Slayer, right? I played Barbarian in Diablo 3. Like, I played Berserker and Lost Ark. Like, I understand the game better than an average player does in terms of like movement and avoidance and stuff.
Deleting.
Chat, welcome to the return of a legendary series. We gotta explain.
Probably delete the one after.
I don't think Pano wasn't fully aware of the rules, so we're gonna explain this up front for those that have never been to a.
Right away.
It's like I am fire.
Doing the same. You're really doing the same build you already have. You're a psychopath.
I tested out Ice. I tested out Shock. I like Fire the most.
You're a psychopath. That's why you know.
I'm not playing the same build. I played Twisting Blades and then the Death Trap Twisting Blades on my software.
Honestly, it's
so
one of the things I don't like as much about this Diablo is, let's use, oh, also